Hello, I think we're live now. So let's get into it. Welcome to today's discussion held by Voices, a DIY platform that has been created with the intention of helping address a myriad of social issues from mental health to climate change through incentives such as fundraising, workshops, talks and panels such as today's. I'm Sara Harrak, broadcaster and DJ who goes by she and her. And today we'll be chatting about sexism in the music industry as part of their ongoing Dancefloor Diversity series, shining a light on how we can make music a more inclusive place for us all. Targeted harassment and gender-based discrimination is endemic throughout the music industry. And just to offer you some stats, only 23% of artists in the 2019 Billboard 100 were women or gender minorities. There's currently a 30% average gender pay gap at major record labels in the UK. And according to Marcus Barnes' study, which analysed 34 music festivals around the world, 82% of overall artists booked for mainstream dance music festivals in 2019 were male. 98% of works performed by major global orchestras in 2018 and 2019 were by men, and 90% of women jazz musicians playing at Cheltenham Jazz Festival in 2019 reported experienced gender-based discrimination. In today's discussion, I hope we can raise awareness on the extent to which sexism is experienced within music, and hopefully we can take away some key knowledge on what we can do as individuals to balance the ecosystem. We'll be reflecting on both personal experiences and touching on systemic issues. I'm grateful that we get to have this conversation during LGBTQI+ History Month and in the lead up to International Women's Day. Just to note that we'll be fundraising for the fantastic organisation Girls Rock London, an award-winning charity providing high-quality music programming for young and adult women, trans and non-binary people, with a specific focus on increasing access for people who face barriers to participation. There'll be a link in the chat to donate, and there'll also be time for audience questions at the end, so be sure to pop your questions in the chat. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Joining me from all around the world, our music events manager, promoter and club consultant, Laila Mckenzie, house music vocalist and entrepreneur, Jackie Queens, DJ and label owner of Pretty Word Records, Chloe Robinson, also known as Barely Legal, Francesca Wells, co-founder and station manager at female community radio station Foundation FM, and radio podcast producer, DJ and co-director of Film Culture, Ludo Guerrieri, and music journalist Annabel Ross, who's written for the likes of Resident Advisor, Mixmag, Rolling Stones, and Beatport, to name a few. So I'd like to go around and just get you all to introduce yourself, because I feel like, you know, naming two things of what you guys will do is discredit to your work. So I'd like to start off with Laila.
Hi, I'm going to mute myself. Hi. Oh, I didn't want to be first. So I'm currently working on a book, which is my newest project, called Lady of the House. And it is a collection of women in house music / electronic music experiences. It's spanning over about a 45-year period at the moment. We've got 120 women in there from all across the world, all different backgrounds, across all aspects of the industry. So that's my main project that I'm working on and pushing at the moment. When we're not in COVID, I'm a promoter, and I put on club events mainly, but I do outdoor events sometimes as well, but mostly club events up and down the country. I live in Bristol at the moment, so a lot of them are based down south, but I'm from up north originally, so I do still go back up north sometimes and put events on there. And I've just started a new company called Freedom, and that has been set up in a response to the issues that have been brought to light during the COVID period, such as, you know, what we're talking about now, equality, diversity in the music industry, well-being in the music industry, trying to filter down the legacy and history of electronic music so it doesn't get lost to the next generation in this period where, you know, we're kind of becoming detached from music. And yeah, that's me really. I've done this for 18 years. So yeah, getting old, but that's me. Thank you.
Amazing. And Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie. I go by Jackie Queens as an artist. I'm a house music vocalist. I run a small label called Bear Electronica that releases collaborations and music produced by women. I'm also a cultural worker. I work for a cultural organization, 9 to 5. And I just started a small agency that represents women who are DJs and producers as well.
Amazing. And Francesca, feel free to just jump in and introduce yourself. I know it's always like the hardest to talk about yourself.
Hi, I'm Frankie. I don't know, it says Francesca there, but I'm not that formal. So I am the co-founder of Foundation FM, which is the female-led radio station based in Peckham, but we broadcast online globally. So if you want to tune in, it's Foundation.fm. I've been working in radio and podcasting for the last, I think it's about 7 years now. I work really closely with DJs and collectives at Foundation, and we're kind of looking at how we use our platform for many things. So working as an agency, a label, management, and just getting more and more, you know, DJs that are female, trans, non-binary out there. So that's kind of what I do, yeah.
And Annabel?
Just on me. Hi, I'm Annabel. I'm a freelance journalist. I mainly write about music and especially electronic music for publications like RA, Mixmag, The Guardian, The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. And for the past few months in particular, I've been focusing specifically on sexual assault in dance music. And that's kind of almost exclusively what I've been writing about since I started covering it. So yeah, and I'm currently in Melbourne, Australia, but I'm living in New York, yeah, until recently.
Amazing. And Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe. I DJ under the name Barely Legal. I run a record label called Pretty Weird, and I also curate and do events around the Pretty Weird brand. And I am currently in Mexico because I ran away from London in October. Now I've returned, yeah.
I love that. And last but not least, Ludo?
Let's see if this works. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I by the ocean, and you have better Wi-Fi than me, and I'm in my room. I don't know what that's about. My name is Ludo. I am a DJ, a presenter. I started a record label 5-6 years ago called Femme Culture with a friend, and I'm an arranger. And more recently, I have full-time with my friends and family at Keep Hush. So now I head up development at Keep Hush as we've launched a new service, merch service, because we thought it was funny, which is meant for artists in a practical way by providing a concrete revenue by them sell clothing and merchandise.
Brilliant. Now I want to open up today's discussion and just throw it out there. How many of you guys have had a man in music or a man in general just say, whether like you're a DJ, you're in broadcasting, you're a journalist, you're holding a senior position in music, how many of you guys have had someone say that they only got there because they look good, because they're attractive, because no one wants to see a man DJ, no one wants, you know, how many of you guys have just heard that from your peers in music? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm around here.
We hear it all the time, don't we? I mean, I don't know if I hear it so much explicitly to my face. I think people are a bit smarter than that by now, but you only have to sort of look at social media and see the comment, like just look at the comments and see how many guys are kind of piling in on a girl who might be attractive, because there's no way she could also be talented as well as being attractive. Like, impossible.
Yeah, I actually had like, I feel like sometimes I'm in a bit of a bubble, because obviously foundation is female led and we work with women, or, you know, like we basically just don't like have cis men in the core team. And so sometimes I'm in a bubble and I don't realize, but actually lockdown was a big wake up call, because there was a time in lockdown where everyone was jumping on live streams. Like everywhere you went, there was like a DJ live stream. And I was like, okay, well, foundation, we should get involved. Like we should, you know, we're not in our studio right now. Like we should try and think of something. And we started doing live streams, and they went great on our pages. But as soon as we went to other people's channels, like we actually got like quite an aggressive response. So sometimes we would be after a male DJ, and like one person's kit was like falling over and their phone was falling, and they were like, yeah, great mix, everyone loves this. But as soon as like our DJs are on, women DJs, there was, don't quit the day job, this is embarrassing, why is she smiling, why is she finding this funny? Like we were having to go through and block so many people because it was just like non-stop aggression. And I was actually, I don't know why I was shocked, but it really like made me think, oh, we're actually not as far as we think.
And just off the back of that, do you feel, well, have you guys ever experienced imposter syndrome? And do you feel like that kind of exists as a consequence of, you know, as we've heard from you, Frankie, just like people, like men derailing live streams, you know?
I've definitely, am I off mute now? I keep muting, so yeah. I've definitely experienced imposter syndrome, and even though I've worked in the music industry for 18 years and I've earned my stripes, I still sometimes feel like, I can't explain it, like there's this little niggling thing inside, oh, like they might find out that I'm not good enough, you know, that kind of feeling. And it doesn't happen as much anymore as I've got older, because I'm more comfortable in my own skin, but it does still happen. And I think the times when it does happen, I've kind of started really observing what's going on for myself internally, especially during lockdown. And when I kind of am having really positive conversations with other industry members that respect me, whether they're male or female, I feel like my confidence is boosted. And, you know, I'm the shit, like I can do this, I've got this. And then when I kind of have these negative, almost patronizing, condescending conversations with other industry members, and to be honest, 9 times out of 10, they are male, these other, you know, I'm not saying the positive ones are only female, because they're not. I've got a lot of positive male peers around me that support me and enrich me. But I only would say kind of like 1 time out of 10, it's a woman that I feel that's putting me down. And 9 times out of 10, it's a male peer in the industry. And yeah, it makes you start questioning yourself, even though you know that you're doing a good job. I don't know if anybody else gets that.
I mean, I definitely have it. I lack quite a lot of confidence. I came in really quickly. I was kind of thrown into the deep end. I think my exposure was mainly when I like won a competition on One Extra, where you send a mix in to Mr. Jam Show, and he specifically said that he'd had no like good mixes from not enough entries from women. This was in 2011, and he was like, I want some girls to like send some mixes in. So I sent a mix in, and I was like 6 months after I'd bought decks, and then I had a residency. And so I was kind of like thrown into the deep end really quickly. And having like a One Extra residency like half a year into having decks was like super quick, and then everything just happened super quick for me. I was like booked fabric after like a year of DJing and stuff. So there were like a lot of comments made about me. A lot of people questioning like, how has she done this kind of thing, and like a lot of negative, like a lot of trolling. I don't think you really get. I don't get that as much now, but like back in the day, I got like quite a lot of like just shit basically. Sorry about my language. Via social media and stuff. I only really kind of get that now on live streams, but yeah, I think where I got thrown into the deep end and came up so quickly, and also the reason why I got the residency was because he wanted like a female to be this segment of his show. I don't know, it's always made me feel like a bit weird. I don't know.
I just want to echo some of Laila's sentiments. Sorry, like to the extent that when you do feel like you have imposter syndrome, I feel like sometimes it's about your perception of a particular moment, and it's an individual thing. But then, like other times, it's external to you, like bias and exclusion exacerbate that doubt that we naturally have, because doubting yourself is a natural thing. It's not, everybody has self-doubt, but sometimes it's the way that people treat you or the environment that you're in that exacerbates it. So sometimes the answer to overcoming imposter syndrome is not to fix the individual, but it's to create an environment that fosters the valuing of that person and their skills and what they bring to the table. And that's what I think, that sometimes as women, we feel this way, not necessarily because we're not good enough, but because we're in certain spaces where, they're made for certain people, which is generally white, heterosexual males, So then if you're a Black woman coming into this space and there's no room for your ideas or how you translate them or how you lead as a person, then obviously you're going to, feel like you don't belong there. And that's not to say that you're not capable. So I think to a degree, yes, imposter syndrome can be something that we experience individually, but I think sometimes we tend to ignore the fact that it's also an environmental thing.
Mm. And actually that's really a perfect segue onto it, because I kind of I consider you all entrepreneurs in your own rights, and breaking into music is not easy, and obviously it's kind of like one of those industries that a lot of people lionize and look up to, and it's extremely tough to make something of yourself and establish yourself, right? So I kind of want to ask you all, what obstacles did you face, whilst trying to establish yourselves and setting up your crafts? Or did you face any?
I think everybody's like waiting for each other to speak because no one wants to jump in.
Guys wouldn't do that. Guys wouldn't be waiting for each other to speak.
That's true.
I can say some obstacles that I've come up against, and still do come up against. I think, I'm mixed race, pretty light at the moment because we don't really get out much, do we, in the sunshine anymore since lockdown. But I'm mixed race, and I come from a low socio-economic background. I come from a council estate. I still live on a council estate. And I was a young mum. I've got a 16-year-old, well, nearly 16, and a 13-year-old, and I'm 36 this year. So I've always worked in the industry while I've had my kids. That within itself, for me as a single mum, that's definitely been an obstacle for me. Just feeling like I know that I'm giving my 100%. I'm giving all I can give. I'm giving more than what I can give. But it always seems like it's just never enough, and there's never enough time each day. And then, it's been kind of like torn between work and my kids, you know, that's been an obstacle. And I would say another obstacle I've faced is what I call the White Boys Club. So it's very prevalent, I would say, in the management side, especially in venues and clubs, because they're more, I wouldn't say maybe white male led, I don't know, because I do know a lot of venues do have females in and females of colour in there as well as white females, but it always seems like top end management is kind of white male led, and I'm quite an opinionated, strong-willed person, and I've always like been in management positions, and I felt over the years like I've really clashed, and I don't know, I've just felt like I don't fit in. That's been an obstacle for me, like feeling that I don't fit in. And you know, coming back to what Jackie said, maybe some of that has been in my own self, because I think we all feel that sometimes. Men, I think men do. I don't know, I'm not a man, but I think they do. I've got a son. I know he sometimes doesn't know where he belongs, but I think a lot of it has been other people's projecting their own insecurities onto me, and then I've soaked them up and started to believe that that's what I am, that I don't fit in. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think it comes back to a lot of having to prove yourself. Like there's like going back to your point, Laila, and then Chloe's point, is always having to prove your worth, like prove you're good enough. Like I find a lot with like male counterparts, they just like walk in and they're like, this is the job, like this is me, like why haven't you hired me, why aren't you paying me my fee? And like even now I've got, you know, nearly 10 years of experience in radio, and still I'm having to prove my worth over and over again. Like, I mean, going back to obstacles, one of my biggest obstacles starting in radio and music was supporting myself, because I didn't have like a straightforward like path into radio. I didn't know anyone that worked there. I didn't study it. I kind of fell into it. And so when I wanted to start in radio, it was like internships, which meant I had like a full-time job, and then was at the radio at nights and weekends. And it's like, you have to give up so much of your life. And I used to be like, yeah, like I'm earning my stripes, I don't sleep anymore, and I don't eat, and it's fine. Like that's what you have to do. You have to prove that you love it, and you have to, otherwise someone else is going to take it. And there's this like, in other radio stations I've worked in, there was this like really highly competitive, highly like kind of aggressive atmosphere where you just had to be like, it's me, pick me, like no one else, there's no space for anyone else. And yeah, like having to prove that I was worth that spot, even not even being paid for that spot, but proving like I'll give up anything for it. And then finally being fed up with that and learning to say no to things. I think that's a big thing, like learning to say no and knowing your worth. Like that was like one of the biggest challenges I had to overcome. And then still I find that even though I know my worth now, I know the value of like my company, I feel like some people are like, we'll do this free for us first, and then we'll think about it, and then we'll come back. And then you know, you do that a couple of times because you want to believe in people and you want to like create a relationship and you think it's going to be really good, and then they don't come back, or they're like, but you did it free that time. Or they'll just move on to someone else. Like there's I don't know, sometimes there's a bit of a flavor of the month vibe going on, and that is like a big struggle for me. Like I find it really hard to kind of balance knowing what I'm worth, but also not seeming demanding. Like there's that whole thing going on of not wanting to be aggressive and demanding, whereas I don't find that with men. I find like a lot of my male peers and counterparts are like, if I'm not being paid this, or if I'm not being met here, like I just won't do it, and that's cool. So that's something I'm really have struggled with and continue to struggle with.
And just going back to some of the statistics at the beginning of the introduction, I found it quite interesting that there's a 30% gender pay gap at major labels, because it obviously shows that this is something systemic. You know, I know we'll talk about individual experiences, about some of the obstacles we personally face, but at large, you know, there's this pattern, and it's just making me think, where does this pattern come from and what's it doing there? So yeah, Ludo, I actually want to ask you, because I know you run things like Keep Hush and Femme Culture. So, and as you said, you started a merchandise business as well. What's your experience like being an entrepreneur, and what motivated you to kind of start these incentives and veer away from kind of, I guess, working in like music conglomerates?
Do you know what? I really don't have like a romantic story. I like literally fell into it. I liked music, and all of a sudden I was working in music, and I have to say, to this point, see, and this is, there we go. This is where like the womanhood is coming in already. Like, I'm obviously foreign, and when I applied for jobs, Googling music jobs, and then people like as I graduated from uni, I managed to get a job for a record label that opened loads of doors for me. So I was like lucky to find myself in a position where, without knowing anyone in London, I managed to get a job. And a man wouldn't say that. They'd just be like, damn right, I was sick, so I got that job. I didn't know it, and somehow I still got the job. But I think I've always been like a sort of like, you know, proactive person. I like approaching problems for other people, hence like I like being given the task and like accomplishing it. And my passion was music, so that's kind of like why I undertook my career. But going back to the sort of obstacle problems, I found that like an interesting question, because if I look at it, there's like so many obvious problems, but I'm just like, oh, but like I'm almost like, you know, I'm a grown up now, like I've overcome all these problems. But then every other day something's like thrown back at like when to feel like a child again, so I'm gonna contextualize it. I found myself in a situation where I've needed to consult a lawyer for, you know, work that I've done. I need to just like sort out and like iron out a few things. And just basically what is happening is that I'm asking this person to respect a clause of the contract you would think is very strict. So I spoke to this lawyer that I met actually at a networking event for women in music. And I was explaining, and I kept reinforcing the fact that I didn't want to be petty. It was like, you know, I really want to make sure that I'm not petty, that I'm doing this like the right way. I don't, you know, I just want to kind of get my, you know, what is owed to me, but I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to, you know, waste anyone's time. I just need my little bit. And the lawyer, a man, was saying, get your bag. Like, what are you talking about? You're not being petty. You're not being emotional. Absolutely baffled by the fact that also I was paying for his time and apologizing that I was being petty about this whole thing. And he was like, you're asking for a clause to be respected that is not petty. You're not being emotional at it. And the whole conversation just kind of struck me, because I took for a stranger to tell me that I'm not being emotional or petty by asking someone to pay me. And I don't know, I don't think that I've overcome my obstacles and I know where I am in which place I am in my career. And then these conversations happen and I realize that actually imposter syndrome is real and there's a long way to go.
Definitely. I think we might have cut you might have cut off Ludo just a little bit there. But that's a really perfect point to land on, just kind of tying it back to imposter syndrome, because I guess like we talk about our experiences and along the way we learn, and I'm wondering if any of you guys have kind of found some important resources or ways of kind of combating some of these obstacles we face. Like, how can we encourage equal entry into music, and how can we be better prepared for some of these obstacles that we face? And that's quite a big question.
I think that people need to have a bit more confidence in calling things out, like blatant sexism or bullying. I think people can be like a little bit scared that it might affect their own career. But yeah, just like calling things out and back, like letting others know that you're, you know, supporting them if they're like, if anything's going on like sexism or whatnot. I've called out like a lot of sexual abuse as well, and that's got me like in trouble. Don't know why, but yeah, I think just having the confidence to call things out.
And actually that kind of leads me on to ask you, Annabel, because I know you've written extensively recently, especially within the techno scene, you know, a few perpetrators who've had quite a lot of allegations against them, of survivors coming forward and sharing their stories of sexual abuse and harassment. So I guess I want to ask you, what was the most mortifying revelation you had in writing about DJ Derek May's alleged sexual harassment case?
I think there were many mortifying revelations like throughout that process, but I think one of the biggest ones for me is the amount of silence around lots of his friends and peers, and especially male DJs, many of whom have no doubt witnessed this kind of behaviour, who I've actually heard stories of these other figures who have witnessed this behaviour, who won't say a word. They'll refuse to condemn or criticise him, and in some cases they'll even stick up for him when I've heard stories about them witnessing particular things. And I think that was kind of, I mean, we've known it all along, but it really sort of hit home just how unwilling many men still are to take a stand and support women. And even now there's so many of them that still kind of haven't come out and said anything, and have said like, this is unacceptable and this is something that we need to tackle and it can't go on for any longer. And we really need that kind of support. So yeah, to see it lacking so much still has been quite disappointing.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, I was going to say, when that all came out, I feel like I tweeted on the day something like my own opinion of it, and I was like kind of a bit apprehensive because I hadn't seen anyone tweet anything like regarding his death and regarding the rape allegations and whatnot. So I kind of tweeted something quite angrily, and I feel like there was only like a couple of other women that had tweeted anything, and it wasn't until the next day when a few more people had things to say that, you know, people started to have a voice. I think obviously you, Annabel, you definitely made a lot of people start talking. But yeah, I was really shocked to see how much silence there was too with that.
Yeah, I think especially when it is like quite a legendary figure and people are pretty I don't know, afraid or reluctant to do anything that might bring down or hurt the career of someone like that. But that's, I think, when it's especially important, because these guys are such role models that so many people in the industry look up to, that are getting paid huge amounts of money for their gigs. And yeah, there's still a lot of fear around talking about it. And that really needs to change.
Do you think the music industry is quite complicit as a whole in regards to?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, it's not like everyone would have known what was going on, but I think a lot of people would have. And I think the preference has been to sort of turn a blind eye and say nothing. I think a lot of it has to do with money and power. And if these people are making money, if they're making their promoters and bookers and agents money with gigs and bookings, then these people are reluctant to say anything that might hurt this person's career, that would in turn hurt their career. Yeah, so I do think the industry has been very complicit.
Can I just also add on to that as well? Because I was having this conversation today with somebody, you know, about some of the people that have been mentioned, and, you know, there's countless others that haven't been brought to light yet, you know, but I think it is a lot to do with what Annabel said, you know, the money, the power, the status, the silence is part of that. But I also think, you know, and I've been going, I'm 36 this year. I've been working in the music industry since the sweet age of 16. And I was going in clubs at 14 because we didn't really get ID'd too much then. And I knew all the bouncers. So, you know, I was quite, you know, very forward for my age. And a lot of people thought I was older than what I was. I think, you know, part of the problem in the music industry with the whole sexual abuse, sexual harassment scenario is, I think, you know, somewhere along the line, the boundaries start to begin to get a little bit too blurred, you know, the party scene, the drugs, you know, look, at the end of the day, there is females out there, you know, that, you know, they like to flirt. I'm a female, I like to flirt. But there's also men out there that take advantage of females, you know? And there's lots of, I don't think it's just black and white, and I think it's a very complex issue. And I think throw into the mix of that drugs, music, party life, alcohol, and sometimes we, as we've now seen, you know, we're getting recipes for disaster. And I don't really know how to unpick that. But I know that I've seen it happening for years and years and years and years. And it's not just in the techno genre, it's across all genres. And it's not just electronic music, it's across all music. And actually, it's not just in the music industry, you know, it's everywhere. But I think it's very, very prevalent in the music industry, as I said, because when you start mixing in parties, drugs, sex, rock and roll, as they say, it's starting to, it's blurred. And I think that the boundaries need to be redefined, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody hears what I'm saying there.
Actually, that I wanted to ask, actually, given your 18 years of experience in the club scene, would you say the club is a safe space? Is it safe for women and gender minorities?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. Whilst I've been doing the book, you know, I've been interviewing a lot of ladies that have been around a lot longer than me, you know, some real icons, not just the artists, but the women behind the scenes, you know. In my book is Lynn Cosgrove, who was Carl Cox's manager for 22 years, and she was the youngest vice president at Sony, female, the first female vice president. She started Ministry of Sound record label. She started Safe House Management. She's a boss, you know. People like Jenny Cochran, Lynn McDermott. Jenny ran Renaissance in Ibiza in the 90s. Lynn was worked for Mate magazine, which was massive back in the 90s for house music. And, you know, we've had this discussion as well. And I feel that, I think back in the day, things wasn't as safe as what they are now in clubs, no way. I think that, you know, security and staff have had a lot more training to do with sexual harassment, sexual abuse, safe space, diversity and inclusion. You know, I mean, back in the days, clubs didn't have diversity policies. You know, they didn't exist. Like, I think there's a lot more awareness now than there ever was before to keep women safe, you know. And my daughter is 16 this year, and I mean, she won't be going to a club at the moment because of COVID, but if she come to me next year and said, you know, Mum, I'm 17, I want to go to a club, I would feel much safer her going than when I was that age. So much safer. But I think on the flip side, I feel it's become more unsafe for women who work in the industry than people that are going out partying in the clubs. I feel that back in the day we had more force and power behind us, and I feel we had more respect, and I think over the years somewhere that's got lost, and I think for the workers of the industry, we need to look now at their safety, because it's not just safety from sexual abuse, it's safety from mental abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. You know, these things are just as damaging as sexual abuse.
And building off the back of that, does anyone else have any experiences with, because I know I mean, just in this chat, we've got Bay Electronica, we've got Foundation FM, we've got Femme Culture, we've got all these spaces that kind of reimagine and re-envision a different ecosystem, to the one in which we're currently presented with in regards to music. And in all your respective experiences, would you say that the club is a safe space, or that the music industry as it currently stands is a safe space for women and gender minorities to occupy?
I think the simple answer is no. But moving forward, I think that's why these conversations are really important, because the more we come together and talk and support each other's cause, the bigger we are, the more we're seen, the more we're heard. And it's that ripple effect. You might think you're just one person, but actually you just spark off that for someone else, and then like it can't be ignored. And we're seeing that slowly but surely, but I don't think, for me, like the action isn't big enough. And it's the small things in every day that kind of actually piss me off the most, because they're building to a bigger thing as well. So it's every time, if you say to someone, oh, I don't like the way you spoke to me like that, and it's dismissed, it's like those small things that build into the big things. And it's like that boys club where like a woman or someone might be making a scene, or they're being difficult. It's eradicating all of those things to make a safer space. So for Foundation, like one of the reasons we started was because, I worked at a radio station that got closed down, and a lot of women were losing a space. That was like a really weird and difficult time for me, but I felt like it was kind of like a duty of mine to take all my experience and say, okay, well, I'm going to make a safe space now. And I feel like I've done that, but it's also now helping other people to like find their space and create their safe space. Like not every space, like I know as like a white woman, not every space is for me, and that's okay. And I want to empower other people to find their space. And I think it's like just backing everyone who has those conversations and believing women and believing people when they come forward with these stories. And the more that we address it, the less scary it is. Like I know, like Chloe was saying, like people are scared to come forward. People are scared to give their opinion. Like when someone's got big money and a big lawyer behind them and an NDA, like that's terrifying. You're like, am I ever going to work again? Like everything I sacrificed for. But the more we have these conversations and the more we support one another, the more people feel it's okay to come forward and say, do you know what, like I'm not okay with this, and just respect each other's opinion. And I agree, like with Laila, like we need to look after women and like non-binary and trans women and trans men more in our community, not just like with sexual abuse, but emotional and mental abuse. And because that's something we can't see, I think people tend to brush it under the carpet more. But again, I just think having conversation and showing that, we can be loud and we're here for each other is just so important.
And okay.
No, please do.
I was going to say, I agree with Frankie, because one of the things that I found that's really helpful is finding those pockets of solidarity that give you the courage to speak up and to say what you need to say. Because when you talk about things like power and people supporting abusers because there's an incentive behind it, part of it also is that it's tied to a sort of scarcity mindset, particularly for people who are not necessarily benefiting from that person. So if I look at something that's happening and I'm thinking, oh, this is the only person who can give me a big gig, or they're the only people, particularly like I see this in South Africa, or at least in the scene that I'm in, there's quite a few people like where like some of the really major opportunities are concentrated with those people. So then it becomes this thing of, if I say something, then I might just, you know, spoil my chance of ever going onto this platform or playing at this event. And to me, that's tied in a way to a scarcity mindset where you're not particularly gaining from that person, but you're thinking, oh, this is possibly the only opportunity that I'm going to have ever. But then if you start to build communities and networks with people, which is what I find is really helpful, you start to see that there's lots of other people who are not shitty, and you can work with them and you can get also like amazing opportunities. They may not necessarily be in your country, but at least you're working with people who have integrity, people who have values, and people who are willing to stand up for what is right. And in that you find strength. So I think for me, that I think is like one of the key things that I always like to encourage people. I mean, I get this a lot as a house music vocalist. You know, people say, actually, I had this experience a couple of weeks ago, negotiating a contract, and someone said to me, oh, don't make an emotional decision. You just never know if, you know, you might want to work with them in the future. Meanwhile, I'm not getting what I want, or rather what is owed to me. So then it's like, actually, no, there's like 7 billion people in the world. I am pretty sure I will find someone to work with, you know? So I think when we're thinking about sort of the things that motivate people to support abusers, I think that's also one of the things. So then it's about building communities where people feel like they can be safe to speak up, and they'll still be supported if they do, and that their lives are just not going to end.
Yeah, can I add to that? One of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment is, I think, well, a lot of people struggle with it, is kind of the fear that if you do come out and say, I don't know, like talk about an abuser, that you're then going to be seen not as who you are, but, oh, that's the person that was abused by blah blah, or people won't believe you. And I know a lot of people in this industry who have been raped by men in this industry, and I've had to protect their privacy. They don't want me to, like, you know, like ever talk about it or let the person know that I know, because, you know, they just don't want it to be a thing. So yeah, it's quite a difficult one, because I can definitely understand that fear of not wanting to be seen as the victim or the person that, do you know what I mean? I feel like you're almost just labelled differently and not seen as just the individual that you were before you know, came out and spoke about a situation like being sexually assaulted by someone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think, yeah, it speaks to a larger, you know, if a survivor feels uncomfortable to openly share their experiences, it says a lot about the society, you know. Absolutely. Thank you so much just for sharing that. Just in regards to that, is there ways that we can kind of challenge and tackle in regards to, for example, kind of fostering stronger allyships with men, or, you know, just in our communities in general? Are there things we can do? Because I'm conscious that sometimes, like, we'll have conversations on sexism and on inequality, but that there isn't really like any action points that are kind of taken from it. Sometimes it can feel but maybe because it's easier just to talk about things and theorize things, but implementing and changing kind of attitudes and the ways in which we engage with other people can be hard. But I'm sure, you know, you all have some kind of like toolkits and resources, or just beliefs.
Yeah. I don't know about toolkits or resources. I know that, for example, with the issue of sexual abuse, assault, harassment, I think it's really great that we're having these conversations, and that we need to keep having them and keep talking about it and keep the issue at the forefront. But I also think it's important that we take action, and that we then go on to do something about it in a more formal way. So if that's figuring out a reporting system where people who have been abused in whatever way, there should be like an independent channel that they can report this to, and where they have professionals that can help them with counselling, help them with the decision that they want to make next, whether it's actually reporting the person publicly or doing it in a private way. Yeah, I do think that we need to sort of go beyond these initial conversations that we're having, so that we can see the results on the dance floor and in clubs and throughout the industry generally.
Mm-hmm. And in your line of work as well, have you faced a lot of backlash from, you know, some of the journalistic reporting you've done?
Yeah, definitely. I think the support has definitely far outweighed the backlash, which I'm grateful for. But there are plenty of people, I think, who are sick of talking about the issue already, who just want to focus on the music, who say we should keep politics and this sort of thing out of it. Yeah, definitely there's been some backlash, but I think we just need to keep going, because that's the thing, that's what they're trying to do with their sort of backlash, is to shut us up and to make us stop talking about it, so that business can continue as usual. And it can be difficult, but that's why it's really important that we have these communities and groups and platforms where we can band together and support each other, and keep going.
Can I just come back to what Chloe said as well, because it really kind of resonated with me, you know, when you spoke about some of your friends that are victims of sexual assault and abuse in the industry. I think, and I'm speaking from my own experience, not of sexual assault, but I was in a domestically abusive relationship with an artist that I worked with. And I think that there's a fear when you say that something's happened to you, that people aren't going to believe you. And you know, sometimes it's that telling somebody something and you're not getting believed, or worse still, oh well, you know, it's because you're like this, or it's because you're like that, or it's because you act like this, can be more scarier than actually holding it inside and never telling anybody. Because, you know, it's to reach out to somebody for help when you're already traumatized and distressed. And obviously you might not even do it in, I mean, what is the right way to reach out for help anyway, you know? But you might not do it in a way that seems correct, or how other people think that you should reach out for help, and then to be shunned and shamed because of it. Yeah, I just think that's something we need to change. It's really damaging.
This is something I'd actually really like to see, is like, I don't feel like victims of any abuse should feel the need to come out publicly. I think they should be able to go to an employer of that person, and there should be like a zero tolerance policy, and these women are just believed. Because clearly, like, I don't know, like, I haven't really ever seen anyone be cancelled. I've never seen someone's life be ruined over allegations, like, never. Like, everyone's always been okay. The people whose lives have been ruined have always been the victims. So, like, there's something wrong here. And so I think there needs to be, like, I don't think anyone's actually ever worried of being cancelled if they've got like this level of power. I think they should have, I think that like companies and record labels and venues should, and like brands should say, if there's an allegation against you, until it's cleared, we will not work with you. Like, I don't understand why that's hard, but apparently it is. And I think there needs to be this like policy that like if an allegation's made, you freeze everything, you pause everything, and that's it. Like there's no blurred lines. What if this happened? They might have been drinking, this had happened. No, like there needs to be some like defined, like if you have an allegation against you, we don't work with you. Because that seems to be the only thing that people care about, is like whether they're gonna like make their money.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately though, there does always need to be some sort of element of evidence.
Yeah.
We can't all just go by word of
No.
And like it's really annoying, but you know, there are some females out there that are angry at people and say things that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't work, unfortunately. It's very frustrating though.
I think though,
especially
the amount of people that do come forward like with lies is minuscule, and I think it's been blown out of proportion at how many people actually do that.
It is minuscule. Like there's so few women that do make this stuff up. But I also do think, unfortunately, in cases where it's one accuser who has a story about one person, it is quite difficult to cancel someone immediately on the basis of that, when it's just one person's word against another person, and when there isn't like evidence per se, it is quite difficult, and it's tricky. I do think that there needs to be sort of a system in place and stricter rules around like banning people, suspending people, cancelling gigs, whatever it is. But yeah, it's not black and white, but I think it needs to be a lot better than it is currently.
I think it's also quite tricky because like if you start going into the realm of evidence, you're gonna have to start asking what kind of evidence is good evidence in a way, because I mean, if you look at countries like South Africa, the what do you call it? The conviction rate for rape, for example, is very, very low. So then people take that as proof that this person is innocent because the court said there wasn't enough evidence, like this person hasn't done that thing. But that like just the fact that you can't necessarily prove something in a legal sense, you know, does that mean that person has not been harmed?
Totally, and I completely agree with you, and that's partly why I've been working on these sorts of stories, is because they haven't been taken to court, because in most cases there haven't been police reports for various reasons, and there's so many reasons why survivors don't go to the police or go to court. But when you have multiple women with stories that illustrate a pattern of behaviour about the same person, and it doesn't even have to be, I don't think it should have to be multiple, but these are the cases in which it's really obvious, and I don't think we necessarily need police reports or to go to court it blows my mind that you can have more than 10 people with stories about a particular person that all add up in terms of details, and that you'll still have people out there who refuse to believe that it's true, or who still doubt these stories from different people from all over the world. Like,
I think,
frustrating.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I've got a friend who was raped by quite a well-known rapper, and other people have come forward too about him doing stuff to them as well. There's been numerous cases. They've all been reported to the police as well. And artists still work with that person. I've also got people in the industry who I've said like they've raped my friends, and they've just continued to sort of work with them. And they're like, well, I wasn't there. How am I meant to know like that happened? I'm not just going to go by word of mouth. So it's quite frustrating. And it's like, how much evidence do you need? Like, how many reports do you need to come forward for someone to stop working with people like this? It's just frustrating.
it is really frustrating, and it's almost like it has to be their sister or girlfriend or someone they know and care about deeply, and then maybe they might sort of take offense and do something about it. But if not, it's like, oh, you know.
I think part of the problem is as well, when it's artists, you know, there's always kind of like this background noise that it'll be like, right, well, this artist was really well known, they had loads of crazy fans, and this is why all these people are coming out now, you know? You hear it a lot. I mean, I know it's different because, you know, take Jimmy Savile. I know it's slightly different because, you know, that wasn't just rape, that was paedophilia as well. So many people were like, oh, people are only coming out now because Jimmy Savile's dead and they want to get some money and they want to get some fame. And it's like when it's a famous person or an artist or a well-known public figure, there's always going to be this background noise, and not just about sexual abuse, any abuse that they do. Oh, people are only coming forward and saying that because somebody started the ball rolling and then everybody else wants a piece of the pie, so to speak. So I don't know how we get around that as well.
I mean, it's
I kind of feel like, sorry,
you go, Jackie.
I was going to say that, you know, I think we can acknowledge that there are some people who come forward and they're not being honest. At the same time, if you see the way that women or anyone who's accused someone of abuse are treated, I don't know if there's anybody who like literally wakes up and is like, oh, I'm bored, let me go and accuse somebody of rape, because backlash is massive. It's massive. No. You get doxxed, you get all kinds of things. So for me, I'm kind of leaning towards a more sort of stringent way of dealing with it, because eventually you'll weed out the people who are not, you know, who are not being honest. But for the most part, the people who do come forward are being honest, and they need that, protection, because it's not fun. It really, really isn't fun to come forward and say, I'm a victim, or I'm a survivor of somebody who's abused me, or that kind of thing. So I think I agree with Francesca, like there has to be a line, like, I mean, I was watching that documentary that you were a part of, Annabel, the BBC one. So there were two things that were very interesting for me in that documentary. The one was, what was his name? Solo 45, getting signed after a prison sentence.
Yeah,
that made me so angry.
The man gets a big, massive deal. Like, and this is someone where there is proof. You don't need to, you know, there's proof the person has been, you know, convicted, so that you can't really say, oh, we don't know that he didn't do that, or the courts didn't say it's definitive. So he gets signed immediately after that, right? And then there was the rock group, I think, towards the end, who when sort of all these allegations started coming out, I think about the person who owned the label, everybody just like cut him off and they sort of divested from the whole thing. So I kind of feel like in some way that needs to happen before we get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, maybe we should be making more considerations. I feel like the only way that people will actually really see that this is very serious is when their livelihoods are at stake. I don't actually believe that there's any other way that you can do it, because what it means is you have to rely on, you know, somebody else to make that decision. We have to rely on a specific promoter, or we have to rely on a specific record label to make that decision. But once everybody has sort of decided that this is how we're going to do it, and people actually see that as, I don't suppose that, you know, people would be deterred, but I think the main issue for me is that people who come forward need to know that they're safe, and they need to know that somebody's going to do something about it. And at this point in time, you don't feel safe coming out about something like that. Like, that's something that we obviously need to change. And of course, you know, the music industry is a microcosm of a larger society, and we're dealing with perceptions about women and cultural and social things. But I kind of feel like there are some ways in which we can sort of put pressure to enact the change that we want to see. It just really depends on whether people want to do it or not.
Can I just, sorry, can I just cut in, because I've got the comments as well running on my phone at the same time. And Silvana, hi Silvana, she is the head of operations at the Nighttime Industries Association. And I work with Silvana really closely and her husband, Mike, who's CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association. Me and Silvana are currently speaking about making a women's group as a side leg of the NTIA, where, you know, we can give women a safe space to come and report any cases of sexism or abuse, and also to help to put policies in place to, just like we're protecting the nighttime industry, but to protect specifically women in the nighttime industry, because there's clearly a problem here. And me and Silvana had a meeting last week, and we discussed, about the cases that Annabel brought to light, and other things that are getting brought to light at the moment. And Silvana, we both said, and she's just written it on here actually, public figures should be educated beforehand, and organisations should be tasked with this, I think. What we was discussing the other day was obviously with the whole Murillo situation. I work in an office that's got a whole back wall of Mixmag magazines dating back right from 1993. And, you can pull out some of these magazines and, Eric was on the front cover of a lot of them. Loads of other artists are as well. And they're portrayed with lots of women around them, like the alpha male, the goddess, they've got the bodies out, everyone's looking sexy and this, that and the other. I feel like, in the music industry, sex is still being used to sell music, to sell tickets, to sell culture, and it's always done in an unequal way. It's always women, that are objectified, and then men get put in these positions almost, and it's like the management companies build their characters as, I'm not saying this is not within them, but there is no accountability. They're being allowed to do whatever they want. They're being fed drugs, ego boosted up, and then positioned almost to, be the DJ that all the girls want to fuck, sorry to swear online actually, but all the DJ that all the girls want. And actually, if before it gets to these stages where these appalling, unforgivable things happen, why don't these management companies, why don't the agents, why don't the record labels sit down with their artist and say, look, these things are unacceptable, make them sign a contract, even prevent it. These things are unacceptable, because I believe it would deter a lot of them from doing it if they thought that they were going to lose everything, but they got told from the start.
I really agree with that, and I think it could be bigger than just with artists. I think it is really important that these event label, production, management companies kind of look at not just their artists or their talent, but their staff, and they have inclusivity workshops, and they go to panels and they encourage these discussions, because it can't just be one rule because the press are looking at this tier or layer. It has to be a complete environment and cultural change, and I think it's really important to have everyone on this journey, on this space, in this space with us. And it will be hard, and yeah, there might be some backlash, but that's got to be better than the scenarios that we're finding ourselves in now. And yeah, I would just really like to see companies be better and do better for everyone who's a part of this industry?
Adding on to like literally what everyone has said, I think it's also very important that accountability for anyone that has any type of influence, whether it's an individual, an artist, a company, a brand, that comes from a place that is not caused by an event, by a conflict. I think it's important that it comes from actually a moment where no one has been called out. It's important that it comes from a place where it's setting a standard for the future. I think it's important that, let's just say, brands are not reactive, are not, covering their backs in a moment of crisis. I think it's important that the commitment comes in from a moment of peace. Hence why it's important that in an everyday sort of scenario, we call out, not in a challenging, necessarily like an accusatory way. It's important to call out brands to be better in a moment where, it's not off the back of an artist being, quote marks, canceled. It's important to be like, I am doing this with my company today because we think this is the right thing to do. What are you doing at this headquarter, that headquarter, that headquarter? Not because someone is being canceled, because we are setting the standard to be better, because this is the correct moral thing to do, as opposed to let's react to something bad that has happened. It has to come in a moment where, it has to be proactive. There we go. It has to be proactive, not reactive, which I think is a big lack. You see people reacting to bad things, hence why often we think it's performative, because it's reactive. It needs to stem from a place where actually you're at work and you're chilling and you want to make it better, not cover the back of your employees, of your artists, or yourself.
I think that's a good point to make, because often when we think about what the future could look like, there are already people who are living in this future in a way. Like there are already people who have, nighttime spaces that are safe, that have policies around them. There are people who run agencies that, are ethical, who have, artists who they talk to about these things. So I think part of the work that needs to be done too would be to amplify the people who are doing this kind of work, and then also perhaps start there, because the answers are out there. There are lots of people who've been doing this for so many years. The only thing is that their voices haven't been loud enough or big enough, depending on where they are in the world and what position they are in the industry. So I think part of that proactiveness needs to be about, okay, so who's doing this and what are the sort of models that we can use to make this more sort of mainstream?
I think that's a really good point, and I think that's partly the responsibility of the media too, is to we're reactive as well in that we're responding to people coming forward with these cases, but I think equally it's important to highlight the people who are doing good work and the people who are being proactive and who are making these steps, and highlight them as examples of what we all can do better going forward. I think it's a really good point.
I just want to take a moment to flag some of the comments. We've been getting quite a lot of comments on the chat. Silvana says, it feels like organizations only intervene when they have no choice. When someone has gathered the courage to say, this happened to me, and that person did it. Why can't we get the same organizations to put in place preventative measures? These same artists are assets, so surely they are compromising them and placing their agents at risk. It's always reactive, not proactive. This is where the change must take place. Really good that we're getting a lot of engaged comments. I know that we're coming to the last 10 minutes, so if you all have questions, anyone listening locked in, please do send them through. Actually, we've got quite a few coming. We've got one from Alex. What does Annabel Ross think about Derek May's response?
That was me. Sorry, I'm here now. As in, I assume that you're referring to his response to the initial set of allegations, because he didn't actually, as far as I know, he hasn't made any kind of formal response to the second article that came out. In regards to the first, I was disappointed in his response. I think it's really unfortunate. I think for him to, like, race is obviously racism is a huge issue that we've been talking a lot more about, again, long overdue in the past year. And I think for him to take race and kind of use that as a shield against these allegations, I think it's really sort of detrimental to the movement, and yeah, pretty disappointing, really.
Just looking through the other comments, we've got so many comments coming through. Beatrice says, can you share the name or link of the project Parallel Dimensions just talked about? That was a half-written comment. I also said, I have recently started making music and I've found it hard to find support or opportunities compared to my male counterparts. What is your advice regarding this? Does anyone have any?
I would say seek out other women who are in your position. I mean, there's, like, in the past year, there's just been so many organizations and collectives that have sort of sprung up, and I mean new ones, because they have been there, but then there's quite a few of them, and I don't know where you're based, but like a good example is Women in Control, which is relatively new. There's also She Said So. There's also another collective called In Sessions. It's a group of women and non-binary producers. There's also, there's tons. I mean, Female Pressure, there's just so many now, so I suppose find the community that sort of speaks to what you believe in. I mean, I'm part of like several of them, because I'm like, I like what you're talking about, and then you just join everybody, and then it's like you meet a whole bunch of people. So I would say use the internet.
We've got another question from Eva. She said, thank you for such an interesting discussion. I'm currently conducting research for my university dissertation on the effectiveness of female DJ collectives as a reducer of gender inequalities in the electronic dance music scene. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the role of female DJ collectives in the scene. It's a huge question. What about you, Ludo? I know you've got the femme culture, which is a great platform.
I think there just cannot ever be enough. I think, femme culture was built out of a place of wanting a platform for myself and my friends where we, felt listened to and had a support system in place and had, a network of sharing knowledge, and where we could like connect the dots between different types of art forms amongst female identifying artists. I don't think there can never be enough of these collectives. I think it's hugely important because it's through these collectives that you become the person you are. Singling out Frankie right now, Frankie once worked at a radio station, and she gave me access to learn how to DJ, basically. So if I'm a DJ now, and if I, was able to tour and do all this cool stuff that paid for my living, which is, is not only achieving a life goal, but it's also providing for my livelihood. It's because I had a network of women, majority were women, that gave me decks to access and learn, gave me a microphone to test how, my speech was on live, that taught me what the standard management fee is. So in terms of DJ collectives, it's hugely important. It gives you that, it's education, it's knowledge. And this is why still in 2021, like, university and education and all this bullshit is so important. Really and truly, apart from the credentials, fuck the credentials, it's because it's knowledge. The knowledge is hugely vital to a person's development and to their, and hence, you know, their career development. So going back to the initial question, vital. It's absolutely key. They keep forming these collectives, whether they're huge, big, small, it doesn't matter. You're giving someone the chance to access knowledge, educate themselves in whatever matter that could be. So let's keep doing it. We need more and more and more and more and more, because you won't be able to access everyone, but that person will access another pool of female identifying artists, producers, influencers, songwriters, screenwriters, and that will change their lives in the same way it's changed mine.
Definitely, I feel like that's been my story as well. A dear friend of mine, a fellow woman musician and DJ, she taught me how to use CDJs, and from then on I've probably taught about 4 or 5 women since then, and it's just like, it's such a blessing to be able to share skills in that kind of way. But I'm also aware that in this proverbial room, we've got so many amazing platforms, and I feel like we haven't talked enough about, I kind of want you all to endorse what you do, you know? Jackie, do you want to start off with Bay Electronica?
I hate this. This is the part that I don't like. Ask me about other people. I can tell you about other people. Yeah, so Bay Electronica is a label that I started 5 years ago, initially to release my own music. And then I started releasing music produced by women. And then I started a party series called Surreal Electronica in collaboration with another label called Surreal Sounds. And it's a couple of guys who've been doing their thing for quite some time, and I consider them allies. So it was really great. I haven't necessarily been a part of like a traditional femme only space, but there's so many here in Johannesburg that, you know, I've worked with in some shape or form. And so we recently started an agency side, because I pretty much enjoy working with women a lot, and it's just so much fun and it's easier. So I started an agency partnership with a friend of mine, and we're working with women who are producers and DJs. So that's almost a year old now. So I think we've only officially started working together like during the COVID season. And yeah, that's pretty much what Bay Electronica is about.
And where can we find Bay Electronica online?
Oh my gosh, I'm so terrible with social media. Go there and like the posts are like from 5 years ago. Hey. But when I eventually get someone to do my social media, you'll have more to look at. But I'm on Instagram. Bay Electronica is on Instagram. We're on Facebook as well, but don't expect anything from there yet. Probably like mid-year, we're planning on like launching everything properly once, you know, we kind of have our lives together and stuff outside of just like doing the work that we're normally doing. Yeah, I suppose it's one of those things where like I'm not really too excited about the social media stuff because I have to handle it on my own, and it's just a lot of work. But yeah, you can find us there, and you can follow me. I mean, I pretty much post about all the stuff that I do on there. So
when are you coming to when we can travel? Are you coming to London?
What? You have to come first.
I'd rather do it that way around. I'd rather come to a stage first. Hell yeah.
I want to see everybody in Africa first. There's just like so many women who are just doing amazing things, and yeah, it's great.
Where are you based in SA, real quick?
In Johannesburg.
Nice. I'll see you soon.
Yay!
Yeah, I'll come too.
Yes, please. Please do.
We've got a question from Will, who said, can you all big up your favorite women and trans non-binary DJs and artists that we should be listening to?
I'm gonna big up super quick Like, I didn't even have to think about it. Ariel Datina, amazing artist from Chicago, incredible producer, incredible human being, incredible DJ, changed the way, in my opinion, even how DJing exists as a flow. Ariel Datina, go check her out at Ariel Datina everywhere. We released her music a few years ago on Femme Culture. A few years ago, COVID really made time change, but I think it was like 2 years ago. Exceptional human being, Ariel Datina. That's my input.
I can't actually choose because I feel like as a station manager at Foundation, I think a lot of, if I chose just like one or two names, people will be very upset. But I do actually really love this DJ collective. They're kind of starting, I think they've started a label. They're from Berlin. They're called Raiders, and they have these two incredible EPs called Queens of the Club. There's like a day version and a night version. One's called Astral Booty and one's called Night Shift, and they're all like from the queer community. They're amazing music producers, and I literally cannot get enough of them, so definitely check them out. They're called Raiders.
And Tom said, thank you all, found this conversation incredibly informative. We've been getting so much love in the chat. Ursula also just says Saffron Music is an amazing platform for women in music and tech.
Yeah, and, I was going to say about Saffron, because I'm based in Bristol, and they're offering loads of incentives right now, you know, for all different kind of marginalised groups of women as well. So, you know, they're big on, I hate this word, women of colour, like I hate it. I say black and brown women, but, you know, they are offering lots of funding and incentives out for non-binary and trans and women from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They're really, really good, and they're really supportive of young women between the age of 18 and 25 as well, I believe. I think that's really important to support our younger generation through this now. I've got 2 apprentices that work for my company. They're both women of colour, and I find it so rewarding to shepherd them through their journey, because I didn't always get it when I was young. You know, my shepherding kind of started as I was older, and I just think it's really important that we support women from they first step into the industry, and I think that's how we can also prevent abuse happening to women, if they have got some really strong mother figures behind them.
For a recommendation, I would say check out Pussy Party in Johannesburg. It's run by Colleen. I'm not sure if she does it with someone else, but it was started quite some time ago, and they train femme-identifying and non-gender, what do you call it? Non-binary people, queer people. It's such an amazing space. They also have what they call the secret garden when they have a pussy party. So, you know, the DJs sort of graduate and then they get to play at the party, and they have a secret garden, which is a safe space for queer party goers. And it's just, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. They've done such amazing work and managed to connect the cohorts, the DJs that graduate, to so many different spaces. Nyege Nyege, they've hosted all kinds of people from the UK as well. So yeah, so if you're looking for a cool collective to follow in South Africa, check out Pussy Party.
Cool. And I know we've come to 10 o'clock, so I kind of just want to get maybe some closing words of wisdom from you all, your social medias, where we can find you, where we can support you, what's your next moves. Feel free to just jump in. I'm gonna have to pick some. I feel like a teacher.
I can jump in. you can find me on Twitter, is where I'm the most active, I would say, and my handle's just my name with a, what's it called? I can't think, it's too early. It's not a hyphen, but the
underscore.
Thank you, underscore, good. It's just my name with an underscore in between my first and last name. And as far as what I'm working on, I am continuing with stories on sexual assault in dance music, and as well as like investigating more cases, sort of trying to take a look at the bigger picture and preventative measures and actions we can take in the future to stop this at a systemic level.
Please jump in.
So you can find, sorry, I need to look it up on social media. I'm terrible. How can I not know my own handle? But you can follow Foundation if you want at foundation.fm. What's next for us is just keep on keeping it on. We made it through a pandemic, so I'm incredibly proud of everyone. And our whole mission is to keep creating a safe space, a safe environment for everyone, really, and continue to have conversations and be a part of conversations like this, and yeah, like make some really exciting programming that I think is kind of pushing radio to new boundaries and new places. We're working with a lot of amazing collectives, Saffron Records actually being one of them coming up. So yeah, just keep an eye on our Instagram and our website, and if anyone wants to reach out or is interested in radio, please feel free to drop us a line. Like, we want to make everyone feel welcome and help as many people we can into this crazy industry. So yeah, and if you want to follow me, I'm Frankie I'm at Frankie_FFM.
Mine is DJ Value Legal, and it's on Instagram and Twitter and what are the other platforms? Facebook. And then yeah, my SoundCloud is DJ-Value-Legal, and that's got all my mixes on from my rent shows and stuff.
And your record label too.
And my record label, Pretty Weird Records on Instagram. And I've forgotten the SoundCloud, but yeah.
Cool. Laila, Jackie, Ludo. I know you talked a bit about Bay Electronica.
So the main thing I'm working on, like I said at the start, obviously while events are on hold, is the Lady of the House book. That's going to be getting released as a Kickstarter campaign in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be all over big PR campaign. So if you type in Lady of the House in around 2 weeks on Kickstarter, you'll be able to pledge for a book there. If you follow me on Instagram at I am_Laila, that's LAILA_. I'll also release it and announce it on there when it's time. And yeah, the book's just going to be, for me, that's my contribution back to my community. You know, I mean, we've got some real icons in there. We've got Candy Staton, Barbara Tucker, Jocelyn Brown, Kim Mazzell, Kathy Brown, Sam Devine, Anya Snyder, Elaine Allian, and then we've got loads of, you know, industry. I interviewed Nikki Trax today, who used to be Kerry Chandler's agent and Tony Humphrey's agent, and she kind of pushed out the whole acid house scene in 1988 in London. Amazing woman. It's got women like Sylvana, who's the head of operations of NTIA in there, Lynn Cosgrove, who I mentioned, absolutely amazing, inspiring woman. You know, other ladies like Jenny Cochran in there. It's got the venue manager of Ministry of Sound in there, who's a woman. I'm interviewing Judy Griffith, who's the booker at Fabric and has been for around 15, 20 years, I believe. Really inspiring Black woman. You know, it's got some real legends and icons in there. And I just feel so humbled to have been tasked with my co-author, who's a man, you know, so men, they do support women. And I just feel so humbled to have been tasked with this because, you know, I grew up on house music, and if you cut me open, it's stamped through the middle of me. So, you know, to have interviewed these ladies and the stories that they've got to tell, they're just amazing. So when the book's out, you've got to support it, pledge to buy it, and yeah, I just want it to go all over the world.
Oh, Jaguar's in a chat. She said, "What's the book called again?" Lady of the House. And
yeah, so it's going to be Lady of the House. And if you go on Kickstarter in about 2 weeks, you'll be able to pledge to buy a copy. And it's going to be a coffee table style, so the size of a 12-inch, with loads of pictures in. It's hardback, really classy print, Italian printers, beautiful book. It's definitely one for the bookshelf, guys.
Amazing, beautiful. And Ludo?
You can find me at Ludo on all platforms. There's a man that has, I spoke to him in French. He wouldn't give me the. It was really. You can find the record label called Femme Culture at It's Femme Culture on all platforms, and you can also follow Hush at Keep Hush UK on all platforms. That's me.
And Jackie, I know we've shouted out Bay Electronica, but you've also got your own socials.
Yeah, so you can find me on just Jackie Queens. You'll find me on all the socials. And I just want to say to Laila, I'm excited for your book because I read a lot of books on house music, and you're hard pressed to find any women in there. You can think of all the books, you know, Last Night a DJ Saved My Life, all of them, you know, the whole gamut. And that's so impressive, and I can't wait. I can't wait to.
Honestly, Jackie, I'm sorry to bang on about it, but you know, I think it's because it's something so different to doing events. You know, I've never written before, and it's just like, you know, I feel I'm very versed on house music, but God, I sit in some of these Zooms with some of these women, and I just have to like just sit there in like awe, because, you know, and there's so many unsung heroes that have glued this industry together, and without some of these women, there would be no scene here right now. You know, people like Judy Griffith at Fabric. I mean, I've heard so many people say, you know, she's the glue. You know, Nikki Trax today, the glue. And it's like, yeah, I really want to celebrate women. I know we've spoke a lot about the abuse that we've been through and the plight that we suffer. And you know, we shouldn't forget that, and we should keep pushing on. But let's not forget as well, like, how fucking powerful we really are. Sorry for swearing again.
No, I think that's the most perfect way to close this discussion. We are very powerful, and opportunities are boundless. So I just want to thank you guys all so much for joining. It's such a pleasure to be in a company of incredible women who no doubt have done exceptional things, are going to continue to do that. And I'm very excited for all your paths. I want to also thank Voices as well for today's discussion. I want to thank everyone in the chat, everyone that's been tuned in and listening. We really appreciate you all. And also want to just give a quick shout out to Girls Rock London. We've raised £80 for them today. So that's brilliant. Thank you guys all so much for your time. It's really appreciated. And I hope you all stay in exceptional health.